The Grand Council Chamber of the Galactic Federation stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its vaulted ceilings disappearing into artificial darkness that mimicked the void of space. Representatives from 47 civilizations sat in their designated sections, each species arranged according to their technological achievements and military contributions to the Federation. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime, converting thousands of languages into comprehensible communication. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthak Empire adjusted his ceremonial armor, the crystalline plates catching the chamber's ambient light. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he reviewed the day's agenda on his neural interface. Today would mark another routine session of galactic governance, or so he believed. The Vorthak had held their position as the Federation's primary military force for over 3 centuries, their conquest-driven culture making them natural leaders in matters of expansion and defense. The session will now address petition number 7749, announced the Keeper of Records, a floating entity of pure energy that served as the Federation's neutral moderator. A request for membership from species designation, human, planet designation, Earth, sector designation, Sol 3. A ripple of interest passed through the assembled representatives. New species applications were rare, and most delegates welcomed the distraction from mundane trade agreements and resource allocation disputes. Zethkar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Another primitive species seeking to join the galactic community, no doubt hoping to benefit from advanced technology and protection without offering anything substantial in return. The chamber's central platform began to glow, and a figure materialized through the quantum transport system. Zethkar's 4 eyes widened slightly. The human appeared remarkably ordinary, bipedal, standing roughly 2 meters tall with pale skin and dark hair. The creature wore what appeared to be simple civilian clothing, not even a proper diplomatic uniform. Most shocking of all, the human carried a small container and held a handwritten sign that read, "Will work for Federation membership." Shocked murmurs echoed throughout the chamber. In the 3,000 years of Federation history, no species had ever presented themselves as beggars. The very concept was alien to civilizations that had achieved interstellar travel. Representatives from the proud Altarian Republic, masters of quantum physics, shifted uncomfortably in their floating meditation pods. The insectoid hive collective's drones clicked their disapproval in perfect unison. The human, who had introduced himself simply as Dave, cleared his throat and spoke into the chamber's amplification system. "Honored representatives, my name is David Chen, and I come before you on behalf of humanity with a simple request. We know we don't have much to offer right now. Our technology is primitive by your standards. We haven't conquered other star systems or built city ships or mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. But we're willing to learn and we're willing to work." Zethkar couldn't contain himself. His booming laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound like grinding stone that made several smaller species flinch. "Work?" he bellowed, rising from his seat. "What could a species that still uses chemical rockets possibly offer this Federation? You speak of work as if you're applying for manual labor." Dave's expression remained calm, though something flickered in his eyes. "That's exactly what I'm doing, sir. My species believes that everyone should earn their place. We're not here to demand handouts or claim some manifest destiny to the stars. We're here to ask for a chance to prove ourselves." The laughter spread to other sections. The silicon-based crystalline consortium's representatives chimed in harmony, their amusement creating musical notes that resonated through the chamber. Even the normally stoic mechanical collective's androids emitted what passed for electronic chuckling. "Prove yourselves how?" scoffed Ambassador Intala of the Psionic Order, her 3 heads speaking in unison. "Your species hasn't even achieved faster-than-light travel independently. You stumbled onto quantum entanglement communication through pure accident. What possible contribution could you make?" Dave reached into his small bag and pulled out a simple object, a hammer. The primitive tool looked absurd in the high-tech environment, like bringing a stick to a laser fight. "This belonged to my grandfather," he said quietly. "He used it to build houses after his people's cities were destroyed in a great war. His generation didn't ask for help. They rolled up their sleeves and rebuilt their world with their own hands." The chamber fell silent, more from bewilderment than respect. Zethkar's amusement grew. "You bring us a primitive tool as evidence of your worth?" This is beyond pathetic. It's insulting. The Federation has a labor shortage, Dave continued, ignoring the mocking laughter that resumed around him. Your reports mention difficulty maintaining mining operations in hazardous environments, problems with sanitation systems on frontier worlds, and challenges with manual tasks that require adaptation and creativity rather than programming. Humans excel at this kind of work. Representative Quex of the Economic Council, a blob-like creature that communicated through color changes, flashed deep red skepticism. Why would advanced civilizations need manual laborers? We have automated systems, artificial intelligences, and robotic workers. Because, Dave said, his voice growing stronger, sometimes you need someone who can think outside the programming, someone who can jury-rig a solution from scraps when the proper parts aren't available, someone who can work in conditions that would shut down a robot or kill a more delicate species. Humans are good at surviving, and we're good at fixing things that shouldn't work but somehow do. Zethkar stood again, his massive frame casting a shadow across the platform. This is a waste of the Federation's time. No species has ever gained membership through begging, and none ever will. The Federation is composed of proud civilizations that achieved greatness through strength, intelligence, and conquest. We don't accept charity cases. The human's calm demeanor finally cracked slightly. We're not asking for charity. We're offering to earn our place. Give us the jobs nobody else wants. The dangerous mining operations, the toxic waste cleanup, the construction work in hostile environments. We'll do it all, and we'll do it well. And what makes you think your soft, fragile species could handle such work better than our existing solutions? Ambassador Yantala demanded. Dave smiled for the first time since arriving. Because humans have been doing impossible jobs in impossible conditions for our entire history. We built cities in deserts, thrived in frozen wastelands, and turned hostile planets into homes. We don't break easily. The chamber erupted in fresh laughter, but something in the human's quiet confidence made a few representatives pause. Deep in the economic archives, automated systems were already beginning to process his claims, cross-referencing them with current Federation labor reports and efficiency ratings. Zethkar raised all four arms for silence. Very well, human. Since you're so eager to work, we'll give you a chance to prove these bold claims. But when you fail, and you will fail, remember that it was your own arrogance that brought this humiliation upon your species. Dave nodded respectfully. Thank you for the opportunity, sir. You won't regret it. But as the human disappeared in a shimmer of transport energy, Zethkar couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just occurred. The beggar's eyes had held no fear, no desperation. Only a quiet certainty that unsettled the warrior diplomat more than he cared to admit. 3 months after the human's humiliating presentation, the Federation faced its first real test of David Chen's bold promises. The mining colony of Kethmore Prime had descended into chaos when an unexpected geological shift triggered a cascade of equipment failures deep within the planet's most valuable extraction site. The automated mining systems, designed by the Crystalline Consortium's finest engineers, had shut down completely when toxic gases began seeping through newly formed cracks in the tunnel walls. Administrator Vexim of the Mining Guild floated before his holographic display, his tentacles writhing in frustration as reports flooded in from the disaster site. 27 AI units had been destroyed by the corrosive atmosphere. The environmental suits worn by the Altarian technicians couldn't handle the chemical cocktail now filling the lower levels. Even the hardy Vorthak engineers, renowned for their physical resilience, had been forced to retreat when their armor began dissolving. Status report, Vexim demanded as Chief Engineer Tolomar materialized in the communication chamber. The heavily armored Vorthak's voice carried undertones of defeat. Sir, we've lost access to 90% of the active mining tunnels. The atmospheric processors can't handle the volume of toxic gas being released. Our best estimates suggest it will take 8 months to design and build specialized equipment capable of operating in these conditions. 8 months? Vexim's color shifted to a deep purple of distress. The Federation needs those rare earth elements for the new fleet construction. The Defense Council is breathing down my tentacles about delays. Tolmar's mandibles clicked apologetically. Sir, perhaps we should consider temporarily abandoning the site until— Absolutely not, Vexim interrupted. This mine produces 30% of the Federation's trilithium reserves. Find another solution. In the depths of the administrative database, an automated system flagged a relevant entry. Within seconds, the file appeared on Vexim's screen. Human Labor Corps. Application status pending trial assignment. Vexim stared at the entry for several minutes. The idea seemed absurd. How could a primitive species succeed where the Federation's most advanced technology had failed? But with time running out and pressure mounting from the High Council, desperate measures began to seem reasonable. Contact the human representative, he finally ordered. Inform them we have a trial assignment available. Dave Chen arrived on Kethmore Prime aboard a converted cargo transport, bringing with him a team of 50 humans. Vexim studied them through his observation portal as they disembarked. They looked even more primitive in person than their representatives had suggested. They wore basic environmental suits that appeared to be cobbled together from various technologies, and they carried equipment that seemed laughably inadequate for the task ahead. Are you certain about this? Tullamar asked, his forearms crossed skeptically. These creatures look fragile even by civilian standards. At this point, Vexim replied, we have nothing left to lose. Dave approached the administrative center with confident strides, his team following in formation. Unlike his previous appearance before the Federation Council, he now wore work clothes and carried what appeared to be a battered toolbox that had seen considerable use. Administrator Vexim, Dave said with a respectful nod, my team is ready to assess the situation and begin work immediately. Vexim's tentacles twitched nervously. Human Dave, I must inform you that this assignment may be challenging. The conditions in the lower levels are currently toxic to most known life forms. Our most advanced equipment has failed catastrophically. Dave's team exchanged glances, but their leader remained unfazed. We understand, sir. Could we get a technical briefing on the specific hazards we're dealing with? Tullamar stepped forward, his bulk dwarfing the human delegation. The atmospheric composition includes concentrated sulfuric compounds, methane derivatives, and unknown organic acids that are dissolving our equipment on contact. The temperature fluctuates between freezing and boiling, depending on gas pocket releases. The structural integrity of the tunnels is compromised, with potential cave-ins occurring randomly. Sounds like Tuesday back home, commented Sarah Martinez, Dave's second-in-command. Several humans chuckled, which only increased the aliens' confusion. This is no laughing matter, Tullamar growled. This environment is lethal to most species in the Federation. Dave opened his toolbox and pulled out what appeared to be an ancient tablet computer. We've dealt with similar conditions before. Deep-sea volcanic mining, toxic waste cleanup after industrial accidents, cave-ins in unstable mineral deposits. The key is proper preparation and adaptive thinking. Over the next 6 hours, Dave's team conducted what they called a site survey. They descended into the upper levels of the mine wearing their patched-together environmental suits, taking measurements and samples with equipment that looked primitive compared to Federation technology. Vexim watched through remote drones, expecting to see the humans retreat within minutes. Instead, he observed something unprecedented. The humans moved through the hazardous environment with casual efficiency, discussing the problems among themselves in rapid technical language that the translation system struggled to interpret. They identified structural weaknesses that the Federation's sensors had missed, discovered alternate routes that the mapping algorithms had dismissed as impossible, and began sketching solutions using actual paper and pencils. This is impossible, Tullamar muttered, watching the feeds. They're working in conditions that shut down our most advanced systems. Dave's voice came through the communication system, startlingly clear despite the interference. Administrator Vexim, we've completed our initial assessment. The good news is that this situation is definitely fixable. The bad news is that it's going to require some unconventional approaches. Explain, Vexim demanded. The toxic gases are being released through fractures in the rock that your sensors can't detect because they're following natural geological stress patterns rather than artificial excavation lines. We can seal most of them using a combination of chemical foam and flexible plugging materials. The equipment failures are happening because your systems are too sophisticated. They're trying to maintain perfect environmental conditions instead of adapting to changing circumstances. Tullamar's voice carried obvious skepticism. And you believe your primitive equipment can succeed where ours has failed? Not our equipment, Dave replied. Our approach. We're going to modify your existing systems to be less precise but more robust. Think of it as turning a delicate watch into a sledgehammer, less elegant, but much more effective for this kind of work. What followed over the next 72 hours defied every expectation the Federation officials had held about human capabilities. Dave's team worked in rotating shifts, descending into the toxic depths with an apparent disregard for the dangers that had stopped the Federation's best engineers. They jury-rigged solutions using spare parts and materials that had been written off as useless. They sealed gas leaks with substances that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. They restored power to systems that had been declared irreparable. Most remarkably, they sang while they worked. The alien observers found this behavior particularly baffling. Why would a species facing mortal danger engage in recreational vocal activities? The humans explained that singing helped coordinate their work, maintained morale, and served as an early warning system. If someone stopped singing, it meant they were in trouble. By the end of the third day, impossible readings began appearing on Vexim's monitoring systems. Atmospheric toxicity levels in the lower tunnels were dropping. Power systems were coming back online. Most shocking of all, trilithium extraction had resumed at 60% of normal capacity and was climbing steadily. How? Tolmar demanded when Dave emerged from the depths, his environmental suit stained and patched but intact. Your species lacks the technology to accomplish what you've just done. Dave removed his helmet, revealing a dirt-streaked face and a tired but satisfied smile. We don't have your technology, he agreed, but we have something else. The ability to make things work even when they shouldn't. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most elegant one. Vexim studied the readings again, afraid to believe what he was seeing. In 3 days, a handful of humans had accomplished what months of Federation engineering had failed to achieve. The implications were staggering. Your trial assignment, Vexim said carefully, appears to have been successful. Dave nodded. This was just the beginning, sir. Give us more impossible jobs and we'll show you what humans can really do. As the human team celebrated their victory with more incomprehensible singing, Vexim found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about primitive species and the definition of advancement. Word of the Kethmore Prime miracle spread through the Federation's communication networks like wildfire. Within a week, Administrator Vexim's office was flooded with requests from across the galaxy, all asking for the same thing: human labor teams. The impossible had become routine, and suddenly every unsolvable problem seemed to have a potential solution. Ambassador Zethkar stood in his private chambers aboard the Vorthak flagship, reviewing reports with growing unease. The primitive species he had laughed at 3 months ago was rapidly becoming the most requested workforce in Federation space. His mandibles clicked in rhythmic patterns, a nervous habit he had developed during his rise through the military hierarchy. Sir, his aide, Sub-Commander Krell, announced through the intercom, the High Council has called an emergency session to discuss the human situation. The emergency session took place in the Federation's secure military complex, a facility reserved for discussions of the highest classification. Representatives from the major military powers gathered around a holographic display showing current human deployments across Federation space. The numbers were staggering. 50 human teams were currently operating in environments deemed too dangerous for traditional Federation personnel. They had restored 3 abandoned space stations, cleared toxic waste from 7 industrial sites, and somehow managed to repair a quantum resonance array that had been written off as a total loss 6 years ago. Most disturbing of all, they were completing these assignments in half the time originally estimated by Federation experts. General Mextar of the Strategic Planning Division, a massive reptilian creature whose species had conquered 12 star systems through pure military might, addressed the assembly. We need to discuss the implications of what we're witnessing. This human species has demonstrated capabilities that our intelligence assessments completely failed to predict. They're maintenance workers, scoffed Admiral Quintex of the Naval Command. Talented maintenance workers, perhaps, but hardly a strategic threat. They fix things. They don't conquer worlds or build fleets. That's exactly what concerns me, General Mextar replied. A species that can make our impossible problems disappear overnight isn't just talented. They're potentially revolutionary. And we know nothing about their true capabilities. Zethkar accessed his personal files and projected a detailed analysis onto the central display. I've been monitoring their operations closely. These humans don't just solve problems. They solve them in ways our experts claim should be impossible. They're either hiding advanced technology, or they possess some form of intuitive understanding that our sciences can't explain. The assembled military leaders studied footage from various human work sites. In every case, the same pattern emerged. Humans would survey impossible situations, discuss solutions in their rapid, colloquial language, and then proceed to fix problems that had stumped Federation experts for months or years. Look at this, Zethkar continued, highlighting specific examples. On Rigel Station, they bypassed a quantum computer malfunction by creating what they called a workaround, using spare parts and basic programming. The Crystalline Consortium's engineers stated definitively that such a repair was impossible without completely replacing the quantum matrix. On Proxima Beta, he added, they restored atmospheric processors that had been damaged by ionic storms. The manufacturer's specifications explicitly stated that such damage was irreversible. Yet somehow humans not only repaired them but improved their efficiency by 15%. Admiral Quintek shifted uncomfortably in her levitation pod. Are you suggesting they're lying about their technological capabilities? I'm suggesting, Zethkar said grimly, that we may have fundamentally misunderstood what we're dealing with. A species that can consistently achieve the impossible is either far more advanced than they claim, or they possess some other advantage we haven't identified. General Mextar brought up personnel files on the human teams. Intelligence analysis of their equipment confirms it's genuinely primitive by our standards. Chemical computers, mechanical tools, basic atmospheric processors, nothing that should enable the results we're observing. Then how do you explain their success rate? Demanded Admiral Quintex. I can't, General Mextar admitted. That's what makes them potentially dangerous. Meanwhile, on a small Federation outpost in the Centauri system, Dave Chen was completely unaware of the high-level discussions his species had triggered. He was focused on what his team considered a particularly interesting challenge: restoring power to a research station that had been abandoned after a cascade failure destroyed its primary energy systems. The station's original inhabitants, a species of energy-based beings called the Luminari, had declared the facility a total loss. The quantum power matrix had collapsed in a way that their scientists described as theoretically impossible to repair without rebuilding the entire facility from scratch. The project had been abandoned for 2 years. Dave's team arrived to find a structure that looked like it had been hit by lightning from the inside. Scorch marks covered every surface, and sophisticated equipment lay in twisted ruins. The air still carried the scent of burned electronics and ozone. Well, said Miguel Santos, the team's engineering specialist, this is definitely going to be interesting. Define interesting, replied Dr. Elizabeth Park, their resident physicist and the closest thing the human teams had to a scientist. The kind of interesting that makes you question whether you should have stayed home and become an accountant. Miguel replied cheerfully. Dave surveyed the damage while his team spread out to assess the situation. Unlike their alien counterparts, the humans didn't rely primarily on sensor readings and theoretical calculations. They touched surfaces, listened to sounds, and even smelled the air to gather information about what had gone wrong. The power matrix didn't just fail, Dr. Park announced after examining the central chamber. It looks like it was trying to process energy levels far beyond its design specifications. Someone pushed this system way past its safety limits. Question is, Dave mused, why would an energy-based species push their own power system to failure? They should know better than anyone how much their equipment could handle. The answer came from studying the station's incomplete logs. The Luminari researchers had been experimenting with a theoretical concept called infinity cascade, a power generation method that could theoretically produce unlimited energy by creating a controlled feedback loop in quantum space. The experiment had worked for exactly 14 seconds before the cascade became uncontrolled and destroyed everything. So they were trying to create perpetual motion, Miguel summarized. And it almost worked. Almost being the key word, Dr. Park replied. The cascade failed because the containment system couldn't handle the exponential energy increase. But look at these readings. For those 14 seconds, this station was producing power output equivalent to a small star. Dave studied the wreckage with the expression his team had learned to recognize as his impossible idea face. What if we don't try to fix it? Come again? Dr. Park asked. Everyone assumes we need to repair the quantum matrix to restore power to the station. But what if we approach this differently? What if we bypass the matrix entirely and create a completely different power system using the existing infrastructure? Miguel looked around at the devastated chamber. You want to build a new power plant inside the ruins of the old one? Not exactly, Dave replied. I want to turn the ruins into the new power plant. All this damaged quantum equipment, it's still quantum equipment. It's just quantum equipment in a different configuration than originally intended. What followed was 3 weeks of the kind of unconventional engineering that was rapidly becoming humanity's signature. Instead of trying to restore the original quantum matrix, Dave's team began connecting the damaged components in entirely new ways. They used burned-out energy conduits as power storage units, turned failed containment fields into power distribution networks, and converted the twisted remains of safety systems into regulation mechanisms. The Luminary engineers, monitoring the work from their home world, declared the approach theoretically impossible at least once per day. Federation experts who reviewed the project files agreed that the human methodology violated several fundamental principles of quantum engineering. On day 22, Dave threw the main switch on their jury-rigged power system. The lights came on. Not just some of the lights, all of the lights. Every system in the research station hummed back to life with power readings that exceeded the original design specifications. The humans had not only restored the facility, they had improved it. Dr. Park stared at her readings in disbelief. According to these instruments, we're generating power more efficiently than the original quantum matrix. That's impossible, Miguel replied automatically. Apparently, Dave said with satisfaction, impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet. The news of the Centauri station restoration reached the Federation High Council within hours, the report with growing concern. The pattern was becoming undeniable. The Federation Council's investigation into human capabilities began in secret, with a joint task force comprising intelligence analysts, military strategists, and xenobiologists. Their mission was simple: determine how a primitive species could consistently achieve impossible results, and assess whether humanity posed any hidden threat to Federation security. Commander Rixtal of Federation Intelligence led the investigation personally. Unlike the bombastic military leaders who had initially dismissed the humans, Rixtal possessed the methodical patience of a career spy. Her species, the shadow-dwelling Nixari, had evolved as natural observers, and she intended to use every advantage their abilities provided. The investigation team established a covert observation post on Theta Station, where a human team was currently working to restore a research facility that had been abandoned after a containment breach. The facility had been studying dark matter, interactions when an experimental accident created what scientists described as a pocket of hostile space within the station's central laboratory. Federation experts had declared the station unsalvageable. The dark matter contamination had created spatial distortions that made normal matter behave unpredictably. Tools would phase through solid objects. Electronic equipment would randomly change its fundamental properties, and the laws of physics seemed to operate according to different rules within the affected areas. Perfect test case, Rixtal noted as she reviewed the mission parameters. If the humans can solve this problem, we'll learn a great deal about their true capabilities. Dave Chen's team arrived at Theta Station with their usual collection of seemingly inadequate equipment. Rixtal observed them through concealed sensors as they conducted their initial survey, expecting to witness the same confident efficiency that had characterized all previous human operations. Instead, she saw something unprecedented: humans who appeared genuinely puzzled. This is definitely new, Dave admitted to his team as they gathered in the station's undamaged sections. I've seen radiation contamination, toxic spills, and structural instabilities, but I've never seen reality itself become unreliable. Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's theoretical physicist, studied her readings with obvious frustration. The dark matter isn't just contaminating the station, it's rewriting the local laws of physics. Our standard approaches won't work here because our tools might not even function as designed. Miguel Santos attempted to use a standard molecular scanner and watched in bewilderment as it briefly transformed into what appeared to be a flowering plant before returning to its original form. Okay, that's definitely not in the manual. Rickstall activated emergency protocols and contacted the Federation Council. Sirs, the human team has encountered the same obstacles that stopped our experts. They appear to be genuinely stumped. Continue observation, came the reply. If they fail, it will confirm that their previous successes were due to luck rather than superior capabilities. But over the following days, Rickstall witnessed something that intelligence analysis had not prepared her for: humans adapting their approach in real time. Instead of becoming discouraged by their initial failures, Dave's team began treating the impossible physics as a puzzle to be solved rather than an obstacle to be overcome. If our equipment doesn't work reliably, Dave announced to his team, then we need to find equipment that will work reliably in these conditions. Where exactly are we going to find tools designed for regions where physics doesn't work properly? Asked Dr. Kim. Dave smiled with the expression his team had learned meant incoming unconventional thinking. We're not going to find them. We're going to make them. What followed was a crash course in what humans called adaptive engineering. Instead of fighting the station's distorted physics, Dave's team began working with them. They discovered that while their sophisticated instruments malfunctioned unpredictably, simple mechanical devices remained relatively stable. Hammers still worked like hammers, even in regions where electronic computers turned into butterflies. They began constructing improvised tools from spare parts, using principles that predated Federation technology by thousands of years. Pulley systems to move objects when gravitic manipulators failed. Chemical reactions to provide light when quantum illumination arrays became unreliable. Basic mechanical computers to perform calculations when digital systems randomly change their operating parameters. This is impossible, Dr. Kim muttered as she watched Miguel successfully repair a damaged containment field using a lever, several pulleys, and what appeared to be a manually operated pressure release valve. You're fixing quantum-level technology with Stone Age tools. Stone Age tools work? Miguel replied pragmatically. And right now, working is more important than elegant. Rickstall found herself frantically documenting human problem-solving methodologies that violated every principle of advanced engineering. The humans weren't using superior technology, they were using inferior technology more effectively than anyone had thought possible. The breakthrough came when Dr. Kim made a realization that would have been obvious to a human child but had eluded Federation scientists for months. We've been thinking about this wrong, she announced. We keep trying to fix the dark matter contamination. But what if we don't fix it? What if we use it? Dave paused in his work on a mechanical air filtration system. Explain. The dark matter is rewriting physics, but it's rewriting them consistently within certain parameters. If we can map those parameters, we might be able to predict how it will affect our equipment. And if we can predict the effects, we can design around them. It was a typically human approach. Instead of trying to eliminate the problem, they would incorporate the problem into their solution. Over the next week, they mapped the station's distorted physics zones and began designing systems that could function within them. They built mechanical computers that could operate reliably, even when their digital components randomly changed programming languages. They created communication systems using sound waves and light signals that remained constant, even when radio frequencies became music. Most remarkably, they discovered that the dark matter's reality-altering effects could be harnessed to improve certain systems. A water recycling plant designed to work with the distorted physics operated at 3 times normal efficiency. A power distribution network that incorporated the spatial distortions eliminated energy loss during transmission completely. Status report. Rickstall requested from her concealed observation post as the 3rd week of human operations began. Sir, her aide replied, the humans have successfully restored 70% of station functions, using principles our scientists describe as aggressively impossible. They appear to be preparing for full restoration within the next 48 hours. Rickstall absorbed this information with growing unease. Have they displayed any advanced technology we haven't accounted for? Negative, sir. Analysis confirms their equipment remains genuinely primitive. They're achieving these results through methodology rather than technology. On day 22, Dave activated the station's restored primary systems. Every light came on, every computer booted successfully, and every environmental system began operating within normal parameters. The dark matter contamination remained, but it now functioned as an integral part of the station's improved operational matrix. Dr. Kim stared at her readings in amazement. We didn't just fix the station, we made it better. These efficiency ratings are off the charts. Dave nodded with satisfaction. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to make it part of the solution. Rikstal transmitted her final report to the Federation Council with trembling appendages. The humans had not only solved an impossible problem, they had solved it using methods that turned the impossibility into an advantage. Conclusions? Demanded General Mextar when the investigation team reported their findings. Sir, Rikstal replied carefully, the humans possess no advanced technology beyond our detection. They achieve impossible results through a combination of adaptability, creative thinking, and what can only be described as a fundamental refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. You're saying they succeed through attitude? Admiral Quintex asked skeptically. No, sir, Rikstal corrected. I'm saying they succeed through a completely different approach to problem solving. Where our species see obstacles, they see opportunities. Where we see impossibility, they see interesting challenges. They don't just think outside the box, they don't seem to recognize that the box exists. Ambassador Zethkar studied the classified reports with mounting concern. The investigation had answered their questions about human capabilities, but the answers were more disturbing than any hidden technology would have been. A species that could consistently turn impossible problems into solutions wasn't just useful, they were potentially unstoppable. And the Federation had just given them access to every unsolvable problem in their territory. Recommendations? General Mextar asked. Rikstal's response chilled every representative in the secure chamber. Sir, I recommend we be very, very careful about what problems we ask them to solve next. 6 months after Dave Chen first stood before the Federation Council as a self-proclaimed beggar, humanity had become the galaxy's most valuable resource. Human teams were deployed across 12 star systems, solving problems that had stumped Federation experts for decades. Their success rate remained an unprecedented 100%, and requests for human labor crews were backlogged for the next 2 years. Ambassador Zethkar found himself in the unprecedented position of feeling intimidated by a species he had once dismissed as pathetically primitive. The classified reports from Federation intelligence painted a picture that kept him awake during his mandatory rest cycles. Humans weren't just good at solving problems, they were fundamentally changing how the Federation understood the concept of impossible. The breaking point came when the Federation faced its greatest crisis in 3 centuries. The Void Plague had begun as a routine biological contamination on a research station. In the Outer Rim, an experimental organism designed to break down toxic waste had somehow mutated, beyond its programming, developing the ability to consume any organic matter it encountered. Within weeks, the plague had spread to 3 star systems, turning thriving colonies into lifeless wastelands. Federation scientists had tried everything: targeted bioweapons, genetic reprogramming viruses, complete atmospheric sterilization. Nothing worked. The Void Plague adapted to every countermeasure within days of exposure, becoming stronger and more aggressive with each failed attempt to stop it. The High Council met in emergency session as reports flooded in from the contaminated zones. Entire civilizations were evacuating their homeworlds. The plague showed no signs of slowing down, and projections suggested it could consume the entire Federation within 5 years if left unchecked. Current status? Demanded Fleet Admiral Kethvar, the Federation's supreme military commander. General Mextar's report was grimmer than anyone had feared. 17 worlds have been completely sterilized. 43 colonies are under full evacuation. The plague is spreading faster than our containment efforts can match. Options? Admiral Kethvar asked. None, replied Dr. Yithran, the Federation's chief xenobiologist. This organism violates every principle of controlled biological engineering. It shouldn't be able to adapt this quickly to our countermeasures, but it's rewriting its own genetic structure in real time. We're dealing with something that exists outside our understanding of biological possibilities. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Federation, master of advanced biotechnology and genetic engineering, had created something they couldn't destroy. Sir, Zethkar said quietly, there is one option we haven't considered. Admiral Kethvar's attention focused on the Vorthak ambassador with laser intensity. Speak, the humans, Zethkar replied. They specialize in solving impossible problems. The suggestion sparked immediate controversy. Dr. Yithran's chromatophores flashed angry red patterns. This is a biological crisis requiring advanced scientific knowledge. What could primitive tool users possibly contribute? They consistently achieve results our experts claim are impossible, Zethkar countered. Perhaps their approach might work where our advanced methods have failed. Absolutely not, General Mextar interjected. This plague represents an existential threat to the Federation. We cannot entrust our survival to maintenance workers, regardless of their previous successes with technical repairs. But Admiral Kethvar studied the reports from the contaminated zones with the cold calculation that had made him the Federation's most successful military leader. 17 worlds dead, 43 more falling, traditional solutions failing completely. Contact the human representative, he ordered. Inform them we have an urgent assignment available. Dave Chen arrived at Federation Command aboard the fastest transport available, bringing with him a team of specialists unlike any the Council had seen before. Instead of the usual mix of engineers and technicians, this group included biologists, chemists, medical doctors, and individuals whose job descriptions defied easy classification. Mr. Chen, Admiral Kethavar began without preamble. The Federation faces a biological crisis that our best scientists have been unable to resolve. Are you familiar with the Void Plague situation? Dave nodded grimly. We've been monitoring the reports, sir. Our preliminary analysis suggests you're dealing with a runaway evolutionary system rather than a simple biological organism. Dr. Yithran's chromatophores flashed skeptical yellow. Your analysis? What qualifications do humans possess in advanced xenobiology? Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead human biologist, stepped forward. We've been studying biological systems longer than our species has had written language, sir. Sometimes the oldest knowledge is the most useful. This organism defies every principle of controlled evolution, Dr. Yithran insisted. It's adapting faster than should be biologically possible. With respect, sir, Dr. Vasquez replied, you're thinking about this wrong. You keep trying to control the plague's evolution, but evolution isn't something you control. It's something you guide. Admiral Kethavar leaned forward with interest. Explain. Dave activated a portable display showing biological models that looked primitive compared to the Federation's holographic systems, but conveyed information with startling clarity. Your scientists have been trying to kill the plague directly, but every time you attack it, you're essentially teaching it how to survive your attacks. You're accelerating its evolution by providing selective pressure. Then how do you propose to stop it? General Mextar demanded. We don't stop it, Dr. Vasquez replied. We redirect it. The human proposal seemed insane to every Federation expert who reviewed it. Instead of trying to destroy the Void Plague, the humans wanted to introduce it to new organisms specifically designed to be more attractive targets than the original prey species. They would essentially train the plague to prefer eating something else. This is madness, Dr. Yithran declared when he reviewed the human plan. You're proposing to feed the plague? We're proposing to give it better food, Dave corrected. Food that leads it away from inhabited systems and towards controlled environments where we can manage its growth. The human team had identified the plague's fundamental flaw. It was too successful. Like any runaway evolutionary system, it was consuming its environment faster than the environment could sustain it. Eventually, it would run out of food and collapse. The humans proposed to accelerate this process by providing irresistible bait that would lure the plague into prepared kill zones. The principle is simple, Dr. Vasquez explained. We create synthetic organisms that the plague finds more attractive than natural prey. We deploy these organisms along carefully planned routes that lead away from inhabited worlds and into contained areas. The plague follows the trail, consuming our synthetic organisms until it reaches environments where we can safely eliminate it through controlled starvation. And if your synthetic organisms mutate and become plagues themselves? Dr. Yithran demanded. They won't, Dr. Vasquez replied with quiet confidence, because we're designing them to be evolutionary dead ends. They can reproduce just enough to maintain the bait trail, but they're genetically programmed to collapse after a specific number of generations. Admiral Kethvar studied the human proposal with growing fascination. It violated every principle of advanced biological warfare, replacing sophisticated genetic manipulation with what amounted to clever biological engineering. But given the Federation's complete failure to stop the plague through conventional means, unconventional approaches were beginning to look reasonable. Implementation timeline? He asked. 72 hours to create the first batch of bait organisms, Dave replied. Another 48 hours to deploy the initial trail networks. If our analysis is correct, we should see the plague begin following our planned routes within a week. And if your analysis is wrong? Dave met the Admiral's gaze directly. Then we'll adapt our approach and try something else. That's what humans do. The decision to implement the human plan sparked the most heated debate in Federation Council history. Half the representatives viewed it as a desperate gamble that could make the crisis worse. The other half saw it as their only remaining option for survival. In the end, the decision was made by mathematics rather than politics. Computer projections showed the Federation had approximately 18 months before the plague reached core systems. Traditional countermeasures had failed completely. The human approach represented the only untested option available. Admiral Kethvar gave the authorization with the weight of galactic civilization on his shoulders. Proceed with the human plan. May the Void have mercy on us all if this fails. But as Dave's team began implementing their biological gambit, Zethkar couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something fundamental about the difference between Federation science and human intuition. The plague crisis would either validate humanity's problem-solving abilities on an unprecedented scale, or reveal the limits of their unconventional approach. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. The human plan unfolded across 3 star systems like the most complex biological chess game in galactic history. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the converted laboratory aboard Federation Command, watching as her team deployed their synthetic bait, organisms along carefully calculated routes that would lead the Void Plague away from inhabited worlds. Admiral Kethvar monitored the operation from the command center, surrounded by Federation scientists who remained convinced that the human approach would end in disaster. Real-time data feeds showed the plague's movements as it encountered the first bait organisms, and initial readings confirmed the humans' predictions. The artificial prey was indeed more attractive to the plague than natural organic matter. Phase 1 deployment successful, reported Dr. James Liu, the human team's bioengineering specialist. The plague is following our planned route away from the Xerion colonies. Estimated time to reach the first containment zone, 67 hours. Dr. Yithron studied the biological readings with obvious disbelief. This is unprecedented. The plague should be adapting to ignore your bait organisms by now, but it's actively preferring them over natural prey. That's because we designed them to become more attractive as the plague adapts, Dr. Vasquez explained. Every time the plague evolves to better consume our bait, the bait responds by becoming even more appealing. It's essentially a biological addiction system. The Federation scientists absorbed this concept with growing amazement. Instead of fighting the plague's evolutionary advantages, the humans had turned them into weaknesses. The very traits that made the organism so dangerous were now being used to control its behavior. Brilliant, admitted Dr. Yithron, his chromatophores displaying grudging respect. Completely mad, but brilliant. Dave monitored the operation from multiple stations simultaneously, coordinating deployment schedules with the kind of calm efficiency that had become humanity's signature. Unlike the Federation's rigid command, protocols, the human team operated with fluid adaptability, adjusting their plans in real time as new data became available. Problem, announced Dr. Sarah Kim from her monitoring station. The plague just encountered a natural colony organism that it finds even more attractive than our bait. It's deviating from the planned route. Instead of panic, Dave's response was immediate problem-solving. What makes the colony organism more attractive? Higher protein content and unusual mineral concentrations, Dr. Kim replied after analyzing the data. The plague is prioritizing it over our synthetic bait. Time to adaptation, Dave said, already moving toward the bioengineering stations. 18 minutes to redesign the bait chemistry, Dr. Liu replied. 36 minutes to deploy the upgraded organisms. Admiral Kethvar watched this exchange with fascination. When Federation systems encountered unexpected variables, standard protocol required calling for expert consultation, formal analysis procedures, and command approval for any modifications. The humans simply adapted on the spot. Modified bait organisms ready for deployment, Dr. Liu announced exactly 18 minutes later. New protein levels exceed the colony organism by 40%. The upgraded bait worked perfectly. Within hours, the plague had abandoned the natural colony and resumed following the human-designed route toward the first containment zone. But the encounter had revealed something important. The plague was becoming more sophisticated in its prey selection as it evolved. It's learning, Dr. Vasquez observed as she studied the plague's behavioral patterns. Not just adapting its biology, but developing preferences and decision-making processes. This organism is more intelligent than we initially assumed. This revelation triggered what humans called an emergency brainstorming session, a problem-solving approach that involved the entire team talking rapidly while consuming caffeine and drawing diagrams on any available surface. Federation observers found the methodology chaotic but couldn't argue with the results. If it's learning, then we need to teach it, Dave concluded after 20 minutes of intense discussion. We've been thinking of this as a biological problem, but it's actually an educational challenge. Dr. Vasquez nodded with sudden understanding. We design a curriculum, a series of increasingly attractive bait organisms that train the plague to prefer specific types of prey. By the time it reaches the containment zones, it will have learned to ignore natural organisms completely. The concept seemed impossible even by human standards, but the team began implementing it immediately. Over the next 72 hours, they deployed 17 different types of bait organisms in sequence, each one designed to teach the plague a specific lesson about prey selection. Admiral Kethvar found himself reviewing hourly reports that read like educational progress assessments, rather than military briefings. The plague has successfully learned to distinguish between protein types, one report noted. It now actively seeks out synthetic amino acid combinations over natural alternatives. This is insane, General Mextar muttered as he watched the plague follow the human-designed learning path with increasing precision. They're literally training an organism that nearly destroyed the Federation. Training it to destroy itself, Zethkar corrected, watching the tactical displays with growing admiration. Look at the behavioral patterns. The plague is becoming so specialized for synthetic prey that it's losing the ability to process natural organisms efficiently. The final phase of the human plan activated when the plague reached the prepared containment zones, massive artificial environments stocked with the most irresistible bait organisms the human team had designed. The plague entered these zones eagerly, consuming the abundant synthetic prey with obvious enthusiasm. Containment successful, Dr. Vasquez reported as monitoring systems confirmed the plague's location. All organisms are now contained within the designated zones and consuming bait prey exclusively. Elimination timeline? Admiral Kethvar requested. 14 days, Dave replied. The final bait organisms are programmed to become gradually less nutritious. The plague will essentially starve while thinking it's feasting. The prediction proved accurate. Over the following 2 weeks, Federation sensors tracked the plague's decline as it consumed increasingly inadequate prey. By day 12, the organism's reproduction rate had dropped below sustainability levels. By day 14, the last traces of the void plague had died from malnutrition in controlled environments where their remains could be safely processed. The crisis was over. Admiral Kethvar stood before the assembled Federation Council to deliver his final report on the void plague crisis. Behind him, displays showed the restored star systems where life was already beginning to return to normal. The human approach succeeded completely, he announced to the stunned assembly. The void plague has been eliminated without loss of additional Federation territories or populations. Their methodology achieved in 3 weeks what our conventional science could not accomplish in 6 months. The implications of this success resonated far beyond the immediate crisis. Ambassador Zethkar reviewed the classified analyses with growing unease. The humans hadn't just solved another impossible problem. They had demonstrated capabilities that fundamentally challenged the Federation's understanding of scientific advancement. They taught a plague to commit suicide, Dr. Yithran reported in his official analysis, using educational principles that predate their industrial age. They solved an advanced biological crisis with what amounts to animal training techniques. General Mextar's strategic assessment was even more disturbing. The humans consistently achieve results that our best experts declare impossible. They do this using primitive technology and methodologies that violate our scientific principles. Most concerning of all, their success rate remains perfect across all assigned tasks. The Federation's most brilliant minds struggled to comprehend how a supposedly primitive species could consistently outperform their advanced civilization. The answer, when it finally came, would shake the foundations of galactic society. "Sir," Intelligence Commander Rixtal reported in her final classified briefing, "I believe we have been asking the wrong question. The issue isn't how humans achieve impossible results. The issue is whether our definition of impossible is fundamentally flawed." Admiral Kethvar absorbed this conclusion with growing unease. If humans could train plagues to self-destruct, repair quantum systems with Stone Age tools, and solve problems that defeated Federation science through sheer stubborn creativity, then perhaps the galaxy's supposedly primitive species possessed something more valuable than advanced technology. Perhaps they possessed the ability to transcend limitations that more advanced civilizations had learned to accept as absolute. The question facing the Federation was no longer whether humanity deserved membership in their galactic community. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what humanity might accomplish once they had full access to Federation resources and knowledge. 1 year after Dave Chen first stood before the Federation Council as a beggar seeking work, he returned to the same chamber under vastly different circumstances. The grand obsidian hall buzzed with anticipation as representatives from all 47 member civilizations gathered for what many considered the most significant vote in Federation history. Ambassador Zethkar sat in the Vorthak delegation section, his forearms folded in contemplation as he studied the human representative who had fundamentally changed his understanding of the galaxy. Dave Chen no longer carried a beggar's sign or wore simple civilian clothes. He stood at the central podium in formal diplomatic attire, representing a species whose value to the Federation had become immeasurable. "The session will now address Resolution 9947, announced the Keeper of Records. A motion to grant full Federation membership to the human species, with immediate elevation to Tier 1 status. A ripple of excitement passed through the Assembly. Tier 1 status was reserved for the Federation's founding civilizations and its most technologically advanced species. No newly admitted member had ever been granted such immediate recognition. Fleet Admiral Kethvar rose to present the military assessment. In the past 12 months, human teams have successfully completed 93 assignments deemed impossible by Federation experts. Their achievements include restoration of 17 abandoned installations, resolution of the Void Plague crisis, breakthrough solutions to 42 long-standing engineering problems, and innovations that have improved Federation operational efficiency by an average of 37%. Dr. Yithron followed with the scientific community's evaluation. Human problem-solving methodologies have revolutionized our approach to theoretical impossibilities. They have demonstrated repeatedly that our most fundamental assumptions about technological and biological limitations were incorrect. The Xenobiology Department alone has revised 40% of its core principles based on human innovations. But the most significant testimony came from an unexpected source. Economic Administrator Quex, the blob-like creature who had initially questioned humanity's value, projected financial analyses that stunned even the most seasoned Federation economists. Human labor has generated economic benefits exceeding 847 trillion credits in the past year, Quex reported, his color pattern displaying obvious amazement. Their efficiency improvements have reduced Federation operational costs by 23% while increasing productivity by 51%. Economically speaking, humanity has become the most valuable resource in Federation space. Dave listened to these testimonials with the same calm demeanor he had displayed throughout his species' remarkable year of service. When called to address the council, he approached the podium with confident humility that had become his signature style. "Honored representatives," Dave began, "when I first stood before you a year ago, I asked for a chance to prove that humanity could earn its place in this Federation. You gave us that chance, and we've done our best to honor your trust, Ambassador. Yintala of the Psionic Order, whose 3 heads had once mocked human primitiveness, now spoke with grudging respect. Mr. Chen, your species has exceeded every expectation, but we must ask, how do humans consistently achieve results that our most advanced civilizations cannot? Dave smiled with the expression his Federation colleagues had learned to associate with profound insights delivered in simple terms. The answer is embarrassingly simple, Ambassador. We don't know enough to understand what's impossible. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed this statement. Dave continued with growing confidence. Every civilization in this Federation has achieved incredible technological advancement. You've mastered physics, conquered biology, and built wonders that span star systems. But in achieving all this knowledge, you've also learned limitations. You know exactly what can and cannot be done according to established scientific principles. He gestured to the assembled representatives with genuine respect. Humans are ignorant. We don't know that quantum systems can't be fixed with mechanical tools, so we try it anyway. We don't know that evolutionary systems can't be educated, so we attempt to teach them. We don't know that dark matter contamination can't be turned into an advantage, so we experiment until it works. Dr. Yithran's chromatophores flashed patterns of sudden understanding. You succeed because you're not constrained by the knowledge of what should be impossible. Exactly, Dave confirmed. But there's more to it than that. Humans have spent our entire evolutionary history solving impossible problems. We're adapted for situations where the correct solution doesn't exist and you have to improvise something that works anyway. Zethkar found himself rising to his feet, compelled to ask the question that had haunted him for months. Are you saying that human primitiveness is actually an advantage? Dave considered this carefully before responding. I'm saying that different approaches to problem solving have different strengths. Your civilizations excel at optimizing known solutions and pushing the boundaries of established science. Humans excel at finding solutions that shouldn't work but do. The galaxy is big enough for both approaches. What followed was the longest debate in Federation Council history. Some representatives argued that humanity's unconventional methods could destabilize established scientific principles. Others contended that human capabilities were exactly what the Federation needed to tackle challenges that traditional approaches couldn't resolve. The debate was resolved by Dr. Yithran's observation. We're not voting on whether to allow humans to solve impossible problems. They're already doing that. We're voting on whether we want them to do it as Federation citizens or as eternal outsiders. When the vote was called, the result was unprecedented in Federation history. Unanimous approval for full human membership with immediate Tier 1 status. Admiral Kethvar delivered the formal decision with obvious satisfaction. By unanimous consent of the Federation Council, humanity is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Federation, with immediate elevation to Tier 1 status and all associated rights and privileges. The chamber erupted in celebration, but Dave's response was characteristically practical. Thank you for this honor, admirals and representatives. When do we start on the next impossible job? Zethkar approached Dave after the formal ceremonies, concluded, his manner respectful rather than condescending. I owe you an apology, Mr. Chen. When you first appeared before us as a beggar, I laughed at your presumption. Dave smiled warmly. No apology necessary, Ambassador. You reacted logically based on available information. Besides, we were beggars when we arrived. Now we're partners. Partners, Zethkar repeated, testing the word. Yes, I believe that's exactly right. As the Federation's newest Tier 1 members, humans were immediately granted access to advanced Federation databases, cutting-edge research facilities, and classified technology archives. The galaxy's scientific community braced itself for the innovations that would inevitably result from combining human creativity with Federation resources. Dave Chen stood on the observation deck of Federation Command, looking out at the stars that now represented home to 48 civilizations working together. Sarah Martinez joined him, carrying a datapad containing humanity's first official assignments as full Federation citizens. So, Sarah said with amusement, what impossible job do we tackle next? Dave reviewed the list of challenges that had stumped Federation experts for decades. Faster-than-light communication without quantum entanglement, terraforming dead worlds using minimal energy, and creating sustainable food systems for energy-based life forms. All of them. Dave replied with the quiet confidence that had carried humanity from beggars to partners in the space of 12 months. After all, impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet. In the distance, Federation ships, prepared to carry human teams to new challenges across the galaxy. The species that had arrived asking for work had become the civilization that made impossible work possible. And in the depths of space, problems that had waited centuries for solutions finally had a chance of being solved by a species too stubborn to accept that anything was truly impossible. The age of human innovation in the galaxy had officially begun.